want to watch this and miss it, here's the recording. So welcome back. You are writers because you show up to Writer Circle. You are writing chapters, you are writing books. And I say this, I know that it might seem a little silly, but I think we need to be reminded because you're becoming something that you maybe haven't, it's a new identity and it takes practice. So, every week we touch base on one part of the 4-part process, whether it's the dreaming, planning, drafting, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit today, and revision we'll touch on next week. But also, you're all in different phases of the process. Ruchi's working on a chapter for Taboo. Just want to also make sure that everybody gets their questions asked and answered while we're here, because that's part of what the time is for. Everybody's familiar with the 4-part process. We've been starting to talk about it for a while. Even though I teach it and I'm writing a book about it, I'm like, I still need this reminder of like rest. Oh, I need rest. Oh, I need to plan things before I go on a trip. I need to put gas in my car. That I understand. But when it comes to like the creative process, I forget that I need gas in the car to get the thing done, and like need to have a map. Where am I going? How am I getting there? Are we stopping for snacks? Like all of that it's ingrained into us in certain regards, but then we sit down to run a business or start a business or write a book and we forget everything that we know. We don't recognize that it applies here as well. So let's just say hi real quick. Where are you on the planet? How are you doing today? Where are you in the writing process? And then we'll unfold and talk a little bit about some drafting tips, ideas, strategies, both logistic and psychological, because they are all real parts of this process. So, Yalitza, will you go first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jelitza. If ever you find that hard to pronounce, just think about gelato and pizza. Jelitza. Anyway, I am Venezuelan, but I'm also Canadian. And right now I'm in Medellin, Colombia. And I'm in I don't know, like, um, uh, how do you say it? Improving my outline so that I maybe start drafting, I guess. I'm in that phase right now.
Yeah. Look, you're in the planning stage so that we can be drafting shortly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yay, shitty draft.
Yes,
Yay.
yes. Can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks. Lanisha?
Good morning. I am here in Oregon, in the high desert. It is about to be cold, so God bless you all that can still wear tank tops. I think tomorrow will be the first day that I won't be able to wear my flip-flops. My heart is broken. It will be 26 degrees by the time I wake up Thursday
Summer
morning.
will be over. It will also probably be 26 degrees here, but we just measure it in Celsius instead of Fahrenheit.
So I finished my core message framework. I'm in the process of typing it in the shared, so I'll do that as soon as we're done. I've got half of it typed out. I like to handwrite everything and then type, and I'm just thankful I type well. Yeah, so I've got mine right here. And so I'm in the planning stages, and from the framework, I guess I'll go into the outline. But I've been looking at and I've just really been thinking about like what is the message, and how to frame it. So I've been doing a lot of thinking. I drove over 500 miles this weekend to be with my family, so I am a bit tired. And so I'm pacing myself this week. I also started a consulting job that I started yesterday. So and I still have a house to keep clean. So like, I'm just like pacing
Exhibit A in overachieving. Yes. Yeah. Just standard life for all of us entrepreneurial, authorpreneurial folks who, when we take it on, we take it on. Yes. Awesome. I find driving really helpful depending on who's in the car with me. Hopefully nobody's in the car with me, just personal preferences. It's just like driving is such a great flow state when we're talking about rest. I was talking to our mutual friend Jason, who was driving, I don't know, like 17 hours over the weekend. Just it's such a meditative processing space where you can't do much because you have to be driving, but you also don't have to do much. So there's a lot of space for thinking and feeling. So can add that to the list of rest activities.
That's what I'm not calling people asshole.
That's right. In between,
I was like,
between those.
I only flipped one person off this whole trip, so I did
That's
good.
really good. That's really good. Jalitza lives in Medellin, as do I. I do not find driving in Latin America very restful. It is terrifying and life-defying every single time I'm in the car. So I yearn for a big, wide open American road someday. Ruji, can you unmute yourself and check in, my love?
Of course, apologies. I haven't been here most of the
No.
Tuesdays, but I thought I could make this one. I'm from London. My name's Ruji, and I've only just submitted, I think, my 10th version of the first draft. And even after submission, I read and I thought, okay, that doesn't sound right, and that's not what I meant. But I thought, you know what? Just submit it, it'd be fine. I can't say the same about my driving experiences, because driving in London, you're always stuck in traffic. There's never anywhere to park, and it's always rush hour. So I'm going to be honest, I don't do much thinking or relaxing when I'm driving. It's quite the opposite.
We need to
So
get
that's
you on
my-
a wide open road somewhere.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
very cold and wet in London, as always. I'm sure everybody knows. So that's me.
I love it.
And my kids
I'm
are
gl-
just coming home. So it's 5 p.m. in London. So my kids are in the background. So I will keep it on
No,
mute.
perfect. And this space is for you when you need it. It's not you come when you can, and we come as we are. I was on a call an hour ago, and my dog really, really wanted to say hello repeatedly to the person I was talking to. So kids, life, this is the space for us to check in with ourselves and the process, because we work in a world that is just about getting shit done. And in order to do that well, we actually occasionally need to check in with ourselves, because it's being truthful and being open. Then that's where creativity and honesty and some of the beauty of the writing that is possible from within you comes. So we just show up as we are. Sometimes our hair is dirty and sometimes things are wrong, and that's life, but we show up as we can. Okay. I'm glad that you're all here. If anybody has a burning question that they absolutely must have attended to on this session, make sure to drop it in the chat so that I have it and I can attend to it when it is pertinent and relevant. And I don't want to, have it be something that just we whip off at the very, very end. Ruji, you've been through some of the drafting. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh, that was a good one. Thank you. What was the experience for you in just that excavating a story?
Definitely a first time in terms of putting thoughts in that way. The framework, the core framework you use is absolutely fantastic. Without that, I don't think I would have submitted anything, because I think the structure just allows you to come back to, hold on, what was the main theme? What is it that I'm trying to share? How is it that I'm trying to help people? Because I think when you're talking about your experiences, you can very easily get carried away.
Yeah.
And the core framework brings it back to, but hold on, was that what I'm meant to be? Is that part of my message?
Right.
And
Great.
when I found that I was sharing my experiences, I found the core messaging really helpful, because it brought it back into, okay, this is the structure, this is the message, this is how I want to help people. And then being able to kind of use that as a guideline to think, okay, this particular experience that I've shared, is, how weighty is this? Is this really important? But it was really hard because in the end, I thought, no, I can't talk about everything.
Right.
And framework allowed me to recognize, what's the weighty, the sort of meaty experiences, if you like, and really sort of resonates with the overall taboo topic, if you like. So I found the core framework really helpful. I don't think I could have done it without it. But as always, there's so much to say. I think that's another thing. You realize you have so many thoughts and so many experiences, and it can be so hard to say, well, I'll leave that one out, because then you think, but hold on, I want to say that as well.
Yeah.
So I think, again, that structure for me was really, really powerful. So yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it's really, it was hard. I'm not going to say it was simple, but it wasn't easy. It was a simple
Ooh, so
process,
good.
but it wasn't easy. And looking back now, I'm thinking, wow, I actually did that. Right. Because before the core framework and before I put it together, my thoughts were all over the place. And I thought, I don't think I can actually do this. I think it's going to be a complete mess or a disaster. But the more I came back and kept with the core framework, I was able to structure my thoughts. And it was fun. Yeah, it wasn't easy, but it was fun.
Yeah, I love that feedback. That's amazing. One of the things that happens is we discover that we have something to say. And I read a lot of other anthologies and collaborations, and it pains me when somebody goes on for 8 to 15 pages just sort of talking about their lives, because they've forgotten that anybody ever is going to read it, and it hasn't, like, yeah, that's your story, but you could have taken it 3 more steps and had your story connect with me and move me forward in a way that would be unforgettable for me, but you just got trapped in your own story. And so that's where we start there. We all start there. I've shared this in this space before, that I drafted a chapter once for one of our earliest anthologies, and it was 7,000 words. And we set a 3,000 word limit for a chapter in a collaboration. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to have to edit this one. We'll talk about editing next week. But it's like, I have to trim this down. What doesn't belong here? What does the reader not need? What did I need to write for me? And what do I share? I ended up reading the chapter, all 7,000 words, and said, you know what? They need none of it. I needed to draft it. And what was left after I edited it was 2 sentences. My sharing my story will not help me heal more. My sharing this story with you will probably trigger you and will not help you heal more. But I needed to draft that whole thing to get to that starting point, and that's where my chapter started, and then I wrote from there. So as we're talking about drafting, and I always use the word drafting rather than writing, because to me, writing feels like I have to know what I'm talking about, and writing is supposed to be good. Whereas drafting, I know I'm just doodling, I'm sketching, I am not painting the Sistine Chapel, I'm just, playing. And that allows for it to go wherever it needs to go. We always say that the very first draft of anything is for you and for you alone. This is for you to figure out your story, regardless of how. And so I was looking at Jalitza's outline yesterday, and she's got some questions about it. So we will get to that. You make an amazing outline, and then you draft, and you may discover some things that you did not anticipate, like Ruji was saying. You're like, oh, and here's this, and here's this, and here's this. Other things will come up because you've greased your creative wheels, and because you've untapped this well. And some of those things will be absolutely indispensable, precious, treasures, unexpected. And some of those things may not make it into the final draft. But you know what? In the drafting phase, it doesn't even matter, because that's not your decision to make. We just let it all out.
Can I also share, and maybe there's a
course.
question here as well. I found it, I mean, in psychotherapy, we often get asked clients to write stories as part of the healing process, as a way to process those emotions rather than suppressing them. And it's never something I've obviously done for myself. So I kind of found that really powerful. And I thought, oh my God, that's what I'm asking my clients to do, patients to do all the time. But now I've been forced to do it myself. And at parts, and I don't know if professional authors, people like yourself, have ever felt that, there were times when I reread a few sentences and I found it emotionally very, very painful. Like I was in tears reading my own experiences. And I thought, wow. And I don't know, because I'm inexperienced. I've never done this before. And I thought, does that mean when I have the book in my hands and I read it, am I going to burst into tears because this is my story that I've just shared with the world? And I don't know. I don't know if this is normal. You know, do you guys feel like that when you see your story black and white on a book for the whole world? Because it does. It makes you feel very vulnerable.
I love that comment, that realization, and that experience. I'll share my personal experience, and I can give you a sort of a high level of what other people have shared with me. The writing process is incredibly healing. I work with people all the time that have really powerful stories. A lot of them are hard, but they're there to, the writing process is to share those hard stories with others. But the underbelly of that is we have to share and own and take all of the work that we've done on ourselves to that point, to the next level. When you write it, it takes all of the work that you've done deeper, further, broader, and glaringly true, because it's right in front of you in word. We're working on a men's mental health book, and so I'm interviewing men to see who's up for it, because in order to write, we need to be at a certain part of our journey. We cannot be like burning hot mess, I'm going to write my book. We need to have cycled through it at least once, because the writing process is its own psychological adventure. There's so much healing that comes from the process of writing. What happens when I read my work now? Two things. One is, and these are things that I've written a year ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago. Half of the time I'm like, this is really good. Who wrote this? Oh, that's a really good point. Oh, I wrote it. Huh, okay. Younger me was smart. I like it. And then there's times where it's still, I don't know that you'll be quite as raw as you were when you just read it, because each time we process, we change and evolve a little bit. But I do know people who, and Erica's on this call, she's on our team. She wrote and published a book, and if she wants to chime in, she's welcome to. Hi, Erica.
Hi.
It's great to see you. You know, do you remember, you actually went live on the socials about this when you were reading Mimi's developmental edit of your book, even though it had already been edited and published once. Do you remember that?
I do. I do very much. It
Do you
was
want to speak
such
about
an
it for a minute?
emotional process. Like, just first of all, sending it to somebody to go through was a process. And then receiving it back was, it was, I wouldn't say triggering, but it definitely ignited emotions in me, and in a good way. One, seeing that my words were understood and received by somebody else. And Mimi does such a great job when she does developmental edit, as well as our other editors that do that. She just gave such great feedback on how X words impacted her. So it was a really great view to see how my reader would be impacted because she was impacted in these ways, and what came across, like what resonated with her as opposed to what was resonating with me is completely different, right? And it really doesn't matter what resonates to me. I mean, my words are great, and I could pull the book right now and I would probably start crying. I'd be emotional. Like, they do resonate, but that's not the purpose of the book. The purpose of the book is to resonate with others, not me. And so many times we do get stuck in that when we're writing. We start writing to ourselves and from our perspective and our point of view and our experience. And there's too much of us in our book. And so the developmental editor is really great at saying, hey, like, we love you, we know who you are, but this isn't about you, right? And so to help you create this balance, because it is a book about me. It's like
Right, that's just so funny.
tragically about me.
It's a memoir. Everything is my
Yeah.
story, my life. But how
Yep,
do we have
and
that
it's
not be true?
raw about me, like very vulnerable about me. And so seeing that and understanding it from an editor's perspective really helped create the, let me tell you this, and share it with you, but it's designed for you, not designed for my healing process.
Yeah.
So it's just a different perspective in how you're writing, and what you communicate. Sometimes it's you're just telling them way too much. And sometimes it's you didn't connect to me from here to here. Like, where did you go? Did you time travel? How did you get? And so having her perspective of you need to add more, you need to reduce, you need to take out, you need to adjust. It really, really helps the writing process, especially when you're at the end of developmental edit, where you're like, I don't know if I have anything else left in me.
Yeah.
You do. You just need somebody else's perspective and their guidance to be like, hey, why don't you word it this way? How about you try saying it this way? Because believe me, after you've written 10,000 words and you need to get to 40, there is a lot of repetition. And we don't do it on purpose. It's how we think. So therefore, how we think is how we write.
Okay.
Developmental editor is going to help you change that so that you don't have 339 sentences that start with the word then. And this is a very real example of a book that I just edited, and it took me forever because I had to completely rewrite 339 sentences. I think I left like 4 or 5
Yeah.
thens because it made sense, but like you can't have in a 40,000 word book, you can't have that many sentences that start with the word then.
Yeah.
Right. So even that type of communication of you're using this word way too much. Is there other words that you can use that will still mean process or still mean, what's another one that people use a lot? Key.
And yeah, right. Yeah.
But like
we've got
key
a couple of
concept or
words
key
that
thing.
Erica's
how
never
about-
going to use ever again because she's been
Yeah.
traumatized.
Yeah. How about the
Erica,
word
I wanna-
significant or critical? Like, and so
I want to
those
rope
perspectives
you in
really
a little
help.
bit because today we're actually
Yeah,
talking
go.
more about the drafting than the revision. But
Gotcha. These are
we're
good
gonna-
things to keep in mind while you're
we'll
writing.
get there. And we
Yeah.
will absolutely get there. What I want to talk about today is some strategies actually about how to let that first draft, that terrible draft where every sentence starts with then, and like, then there's a key. I don't care how you can say every single sentence in your whole shitty first draft can start exactly the same way. I don't care. Doesn't matter because it's not ready for the next stages. The goal in the first draft and the goal in all of drafting, I'm setting myself, I'm going away for a couple of days next week. I'm going to be doing my own solo writing retreat to make some progress on my own goddamn book. The goal of the drafting is to tap into what it is that you've discovered is your main point and let it flow. And until it's like, I don't know, you've got a big container full of liquid and you dump it upside down until every last drop is out. It's cathartic, it's exhausting, and good shitty draft writing, there's spelling mistakes, you don't care about grammar, we are not worried about the structure or the flow or the audience or any of the things that Erica's just talking about, because we have systems in place for later, that you just, whatever comes to mind, whatever words, if it's all curse words, I don't care. If you just need to get it out, if it's horrific, if you're crying, if you need to tear it apart, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of different ways, and people have already mentioned this, right? Lanisha likes to write pen and paper. Yes, that is a way of doing it. I do voice to text from Post-its, right? And so what I want you to be thinking about, we have a woman in our group who is a formal pianist. She loves typing at the keyboard because that is her creative flow. When I sit in front of my laptop, I turn into a pedantic asshole. I turn into a white 65-year-old European professor with leather elbow patches, and I start preaching at my book. I do. I've watched it, and I don't know if Eric has ever had to read any of that shit, but it's bad. And I take what is in my heart and I kill it because I'm trying to sound smarter than I feel. Okay. And so I know that there's ways that I write that make me flourish. And I know that there's ways that I show up for my story that are death. And I want each of you to begin to think about it, play with it, and explore for yourself what makes flow for you. What story is, like, I take my dog for a walk. When I discovered Otter voice to text transcription, I take my dog for a walk. I know what I'm talking about, and I can write 4,000 words an hour. Okay. I wrote my entire last book on my balcony in a weekend, Post-its and voice to text. It was insane and it was easy. And I do really appreciate simple, but not easy. But when I have all of the pieces in place and I know the system that I can use, it actually became pretty damn easy because I was talking about stuff that I knew and I'd done all the thinking and the organizing. So all of this to say, if you find yourself writing and it feels sort of like squeezing a blackhead off of your face, and you're trying to pop a pimple, it's probably not your flow state. Okay. If you're there and you're like, no, I can't say it that way, backspace, 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 you are not allowing yourself to be in flow, and you are going to be a frustrated creator. You are in the editing phase before you've even written something. Okay. And I talk to people all the time and they're like, writing is horrible. And I was like, yeah, it's only because you're trying to edit something before it has come out of your brain. So let it out of your brain. Okay. I remember one of my earliest meetings with Jalitza, I think it was like the third time we'd ever met, but I showed her this like benchmarks and all of the ways that I want you to celebrate. And I want you right now, especially those of you who are looking up at your shitty first draft, how will you celebrate and acknowledge the accomplishment of writing the absolute worst version of your book? How will you commemorate the accomplishment of a bad draft? Every word can be misspelled. There can be no punctuation. It can be absolutely illegible. If that works for you, I do not care. How will you reward yourself? Because we have it so ingrained in us to do it well that it's really, really hard to do something badly. And the first draft has to be bad. It has to be rough and messy and not suitable for public consumption. Because it's not for public consumption. You're going to edit it 25 times and we're going to help. It doesn't need to be good. How many people really think, yeah, I hear her, but I'm pretty sure that my first draft is going to be great. It's just going to be magnificent. And if it's not magnificent, maybe I'm a shitty writer and I should give up. That's literally what happens in my head. I'm like, I teach this shit, so I know my first draft's going to be better. It's just going to be good. And then it's not, and I'm shocked, and it's horrific, okay? First rhymes with worst. It has to be your worst draft. So it has to be bad. I want you to aim for bad, which is just such a weird thing, but it's absolutely true. So what are the conditions that you need for a bad draft? You have your core message framework. And Ruji, I'm so glad that that structure helped both keep you on track, helped you, because there are, when people start writing chapters, they're like, oh, but I have a whole book in me. I was like, of course you do. I know you do. But we start with a chapter and we unlock Pandora's box and then we go from there. Because it is just meant to be a bite. It's a morsel, right? It's a tease of all the other things that you have to say. So you have a core message framework, you have an outline, and then you go wild inside that outline. If we're talking about masculine and feminine energy, we have container, and then we can be free inside that container. The reason, Jalitza, the reason I pushed you last week so hard to make your outline more clear and more specific is so that you had a firm enough container that you can go wild. Every single one of those bullet points, I want you just to go. Everything that you could possibly think, say, feel, share on that, because then we can just, the feminine energy is creative, it's wild, it's loose, it's unexpected. Every one of us here in a female body, in a modern world, we don't really do that a lot. We're holding our shit together. We are very masculine. So build yourself that container so that you can play in that creative space and discover, even beyond what you think you're here to say, something else may come out. Let it come out. This doesn't fit on my outline. Oh, I'm not going to write about it. Go ahead and write about it. Get it out of your head, out of your heart, off your chest, off your shoulders. We don't need to worry about whether it makes it into the final draft. Now we just draft. Okay. I want to open it up for questions, and then I'm going to give you 10 minutes to actually write, draft, voice to text, however it is, dream, sketch, doodle, tell a story. Erica's really good at sometimes at giving prompts, but if there's a general sort of like write, I never say write your intro near the beginning because you don't actually know what you're going to end up saying. So don't write your intro. Erica, what could we have them dig into? Just maybe like why their message matters for their audience, something.
It's so funny because I was actually going to say something of like that. A really great practice is to answer the simple question of why am I writing this book?
Mm-hmm.
That will give you the basis of the whole complete answer, which is why am I writing this book and how is it going to support others? Right? So you start with your why, simple answer, and you'll be surprised when you do this kind of like a journal entry experience. Think of it that way, not as I'm writing a book. Each of these sections is just, I'm doing a journal entry. I'm just writing this chapter or page or whatever, instead of I'm writing a book. It'll help you really get into that state of flow where you allow yourself to be vulnerable on the page. Because that's where that disconnect is. We want to be vulnerable here, and we say we're going to be. When we go to actually like write it or type it and the words become real, there's a block. So breaking your sections down and doing it as like this definitely helps with that. So why am I writing this book? There were a few questions in the chat. Do you want to answer
Okay.
it real quick before you guys start writing? Okay.
Let's get those cleared out so that we can, yeah.
Yes. So should we worry about the approximate number of words? No, not yet. Not yet. When you're submitting for your final draft, yep. Up till now, nope. You're going to have no problem whatsoever by meeting your word requirement. Most likely you might struggle because you'll go over. Like that's a real thing, which is fine. So it costs a little bit more. It's not, we don't really overcharge even when you go over 40. We just like, you got to compensate a little bit because there's more editing, right? There's more formatting, those type of things. But as opposed to other publishing companies where there's like, it's super strict. It's kind of mean how they do it. Anyway, so don't worry about your word count right now. The worst, your shitty version goes to us. If you have hired us to do your developmental edit, your worst version is going to be probably the third worst version that you've had. Fourth, yeah. Depends on how many times you personally go through and edit and re-edit yourself. Right now, you're shooting for, I have my core message framework. I have a very concise and detailed outline that I want to follow. And I have gone in and filled in the details under all these outlined things. That's your first one. Second one is, I'm going to go through and read. Do I connect this section to this section? Where do I need to add stories? Where do I need to do this? And you're going to go through and you're going to add in more of your flow.
Can I hop in here for a second?
Yeah,
Because
go.
your worst version, usually, in my experience, no one will make sense of it but you.
Yeah.
No one. Our best editors and our best team will be like, I don't know what the hell she's trying to do here. I have no idea. But you know exactly what you're trying to do here. And then you'll see it on the page and be like, oh, I didn't do what I thought I was trying to do. And you're the only one who knows how to close the gap and say what you need to say, which is why we never get the worst version. No one else will ever read it, which is partly so much fun. You're like, oh, I can make it terrible. No one will ever read this. Just it's literally for your eyes only. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Erica.
Yeah, you won't send it to us. Well, in our process, you don't send us your manuscript until you feel like you have a substantial book here and you're ready for somebody to give you very detailed, very concise information and editing on your words. And it is way more of a massive edit than the final edit.
Yeah.
It should be in our process. It should be way more. Like you're going to be talking to your editor of like, what do you mean I didn't explain this concept? What, like answering questions. We'll prompt you with, what does this mean? How are you trying to get from fairy tales to the graveyard? Like, where's that? Like, we'll ask you questions for you to answer in your writing. Right. So that's that developmental edit. And like Ciara said, it'll probably be your third, or I mean, for me, it was, I think, my third one because I wasn't working with her on that process. But in the way that she structures and teaches you throughout this writing and our story incubator, anytime we're working with a writer, is you're going to have 4 shitty drafts. You're just going to send us the 4th shittiest draft, right? That you're ready for constructive feedback on.
By then, it's the best you can make it.
Yeah.
With what you have. And I usually get, there's 2 things, and then I do want to give you a couple minutes to actually just draft and get a story out. It's the, I don't want anyone to see this because I'm still raw and naked and I'm terrified. But at the same time, I am so sick of this baby. Will somebody please hold this screaming, vomiting, near-born child, because I am done. I'm over it. I'm so sick of this baby.
Yeah.
That's the don't judge me, right? Don't judge me that I didn't change its diaper because it's not really ready for college yet, but get it away from me. That's when you give it to the developmental edit. Okay.
That's a good metaphor for it.
Lanisha, the answer simple is yes. I'm going to set the alarm. I want you to draft. The question is, why am I writing this book? Riff, go wild, 10 minutes, and we will come back. Okay? You can camera off, you can audio off, but I'll nudge you back in a few minutes. If you have questions in the meantime, drop them in the chat.
Just doing a little check-in, seeing how everybody's doing. If you have any questions, leave it in the chat, please.
I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. Try to wrap up your thought. Coming back together. How we doing? All right. Quick check-in. What method did you use for your drafting? Pen and paper, voice to text, just typing in the computer. Okay, I see pen and paper. Ruji was typing. Yep, Lanisha was typing. I was talking into my phone. Awesome. So you've already either decided or tried a methodology. I encourage you to dabble with a different methodology just to answer the question beyond a shadow of a doubt, how you want to be drafting at this stage. Later on, I'll maybe guarantee you, or once you have a shitty first draft and then you're making those changes, you may use a different methodology. You may not. I still have like a whole document, like a 30,000 word draft of a manuscript, and then I still will voice to text, and then I export it and I drag and drop because I still like to just get it out, and I don't want to insert asshole paragraphs because that's my fingers are assholes apparently. So however you find the flow, cool. Keep in mind that that may shift, it may not, depending on where you are in the stages of the process. Yelitza, well, feedback about drafting real quick, and then before everybody hops off, if Jalitza is willing, I want to just show them the outline that she worked on. Any feedback about just taking a minute to do that writing?
I
Can
do.
I just,
Sorry.
Ruji first, and then Jalitza.
I just want to quickly share, like, again, just reading through what I've just drafted now, but also the submission. I mean, because I'm I'm a clinician, and we write psychological reports every day, all the time. So when I read back, I just think it sounds so clinical. So I that's something that I've noticed as part of doing this process, that it sounds very clinical, but that's because that's my natural flow, because it's what I do every day. I've been doing it for too long now. So it's really hard to break away from that. So yeah, I just noticed it again. I thought, why does it sound so clinical? But I thought it's because that's how my brain works.
Because that's how you're well, and especially
I can't turn it off.
so I want to then challenge you to try a different method, because this is your muscle memory of being professional. Okay. I'm listening to an audiobook. It's a romance, and a woman is replying to an email from the love of her life, right? And she's a lawyer. And so she starts the email. Thank you for your last message. In regards to the point that you made, she's like, no, right? She's doing her lawyer thing. That is not how you respond to an email that professes love. But if you write lawyer memos all day long, that is the go-to space. So I know that you've already submitted your chapter. This is okay. In future dabbling, I want you to play with other forms of communication so you can break out of the muscle memory of being the badass that is the professional version of you. Because when you speak, or when you're, even probably when you're with a client, you might be different than filling out a report, right? So just play with the different voices because we're different, right? In different ways.
Mhm.
Cool. Any other feedback from doing the exercise just now?
No, I just wanted to say that it's funny because my brain works this way, right? We're talking in English, so I started in English, and all of a sudden I switched to Spanish. But that also like it only means to me that I'm like letting it like just go
Mhm.
with the flow.
Yeah.
Because had I been in a okay, I have to do this way mode, then it was either gonna be all in English or all in Spanish because I'm square. But I just wanted to share that it's like my brain is because now we're in English, my brain is working in English, but then after one page, it's like, what? Why? So
Yeah.
I started writing in Spanish. Mhm.
So I love that because also, especially depending on your fluency in English, it requires like a different part of our consciousness and brain to be working in another language, right? And the words that we choose and the way that we communicate, it's really different. We can almost even have different personalities in different languages. And so that's not flow. And so if it ends up being in Spanglish, that's fine. I used to go between Colombia and Shanghai, and like the things that happened in my brain, and I was speaking Mandarin and Spanish badly, always in the wrong country, but it was just like, that was what's happening. Just let it come out. And then we'll figure out, we're the kid, we're going to dump all the Legos on the floor all at once, right? Like that's how kids organize. I love it. They just like take everything and put it in a big pile. That's your first draft. Okay. Any other questions or comments about that? I've been supporting Yalitza in her outline, and I just want to show you. Any other questions? You wait the responsible 3 seconds. Okay. So Jalitza's first outline was like this. Okay, this was like her whole book. Chapter, 4 bullet points. I was like, okay, we're getting there, but we're not there. Jalitza, can you talk us through? And so like now this is her outline. Last week we talked about a chapter format so that there's some consistency throughout every chapter. We'll have some, it's all in Spanish, so practice your Spanish if you want, but it's basically every chapter will have some consistent pieces, some touchstones, and then each chapter, as you see, follows that structure. And then there's I'm going to tell the story about this, and then I'm going to give the detail about that, and then I'm going to teach this lesson about this, and then I'm going to add these additional resources, and then I'm going to transition from this chapter to that chapter. Okay. And so this is much more filled out, and this is a stronger container for her to then go make a big fat mess inside this. And this is the last piece I just want to leave you with, when we're writing a chapter, an article, but especially an entire book, you may wake up and be like, oh, well, I'm going to start my book, so I should do part 1 of 1. But what if you're not passionate about part 1 of 1 right now? You just scroll until you're like, ooh, I want to write about that. And then you write about that. And then you can find, oh, I really want to write about that. I'm in the mood to be clinical. I'm in the mood to tell this story. I'm in the mood to write this part. And then you get some choice. But if you're like, oh, God, I have to write this part, how wonderful is that experience going to be? And how wonderful is that final product going to be? Not great. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be it's unfun to do, and it'll probably be unfun to read and revise. So I want to celebrate you, Jalitza, for really digging in. And I'd love to hear, I know you told me in comments, but what was the difference and what's sort of happened for you now that you've built it out this far?
Yeah, because I think before I was just, okay, this is the main subject. And these are four points I'm going to talk about, blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, I was not including in my outline the part of my story, let's say, because I want my story to be like the, el hilo conductor, how do you
Yeah.
say that?
The connecting thread.
Exactly, the connected thread. I'm going to use myself as an example for people to understand the problem, and then I offer the solution. So what I think you said it last week about the outline is like someone needs to be able to read it and and understand what's happening. Oh, okay, so this is where she talks about personal stuff. This is where she gives the tools, and then what I did is I started remembering all these books I've read. And I love when they have like a phrase or a quote from someone. So I'm like, I love that. So why not use it as well? And then I'm like, why not add something I tell myself when I'm doing this activity or so on. So I felt it was like, how do you call those moments where it's, you turn 180 degrees?
Yeah, like just a critical pivot. Yeah.
Yeah, like I was completely lost doing like a homework textbook something, and now I'm like, okay, this has this makes sense. Looks like something that could become something else, not too far away from now. So, and it's all because of your words, Sarah. Basically, your advices that you gave about the outline, that my brain was like, oh,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and I love that you said homework, because the first version looks like it's homework that you're doing for me, right? What's the minimum I can give Sierra to get her off my back? And then the outline is, this is my goddamn book. This is what I want to say. This is how I want to say it. This is who I'm talking to. I'm the boss. I'm the driver. I get to decide, right? None of this is homework for Sierra. This is your story, your book. I'm the one doing homework because I'm going to review it and nudge you forward, right? But that change of ownership and change of priority is really huge. And I can see it in there because you like claimed it. And now you can play. You've done all the thinking. The outline will probably not be an exact reflection of your final draft. But I don't use Waze and all those apps that tell you how to get from place to place. But you know, when you put in, here's where I'm starting and here's where I'm going. And it shows you literally a physical map, which I love. But then you can, now turn left. Great. Now go 300 meters. Now stop. Now turn right. That's what you're doing with your outline for yourself. And you're creating the reader journey for the reader as well. Okay. So I recognize that we're at time. And I want to be mindful of that. But this lesson this week, and it doesn't mean you have to draft all week, but when you are in drafting mode, when you're like, get me that pen and paper and everybody go away for 6 days. Okay. Whatever that energy is, whether it's an hour, whether it's a week, I want you to be aware of your energy, the methodology that you're showing up with your story. And I want you to give yourself permission to go absolutely wild inside the container that you've created for yourself. How does that feel? Make sense? Lanisha, you're still closing in on that container itself, but this is just in sort of preparation for when you get there. Okay. Any final questions or feedback from today's session before I say goodbye? It's great to spend time with you all.
Here, I'll just say, email me if you want some Black men.
Yes, it's really, really important. Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
I know, out of context, she and I had a private message she said, email me if you want some Black men. But what she meant was, I would like to connect you with some Black men who might be prospective authors for a men's mental health book. Now that everybody,
Yeah, all that.
can you see how many different colors I just changed?
Keisha,
My bad.
I was like, where do we raise our hands?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
like,
thought
Mary,
you-
Where
like,
where
I
do
thought
I
you
put my
said-
name?
I thought
Do you
I
want my
said it
email?
right here, right?
Yeah, look, as I live with a ginger, right, with blue eyes.
Of course you do, because you live in the deserts of Oregon.
Yeah.
All right, so I got today's blush out of the way.
Yeah,
But now that that's
but I can help
recorded,
y'all with that too, you know. No, just kidding.
side conversation, we're gonna pause the recording of
Oh.
Writer's Circle and I'll talk to you all later. That was a fabulous way to end the call. Have a great week. Enjoy. And as always, just drop comments, questions, progress, success in the school community. We'd love to hear from you, support you, and celebrate you. Adios.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.